Welcome to Visibility by Design podcast with your host, Juliette Stapleton. In this show, I want to help you combine your marketing strategies and your human design potential so you can show up, stand out, and attract your perfect clients with confidence and ease. Are you ready? Enjoy the show. Hi guys, and welcome to Visibility by Design. Today is a very, very special guest. I should really start with my next guest needs no introduction, but I know some of you are just listening, so I have to introduce one of the most favorite people, I think, in the online space that I have ever followed. And she's also known as the Queen of Facebook. They say that Mark Zuckerberg comes and asks you for advice sometimes, right? You're also known as the premier Facebook marketing expert. And guys, I'm talking about Mari Smith. Mari, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much, Juliette. I am really looking forward to our conversation today.
Me too, because just a couple of months ago, I wasn't in a good place in my life, and there was lots of really bad stuff happening. And in that moment, I received a newsletter from you. And in that newsletter, and I follow you for years for Facebook and social media updates, and I absolutely adore your stuff. And then all of a sudden, this newsletter, I don't even know why I opened it. It was a bad day in my life, right? It was a dark moment. And I felt like I needed to open that newsletter. And in that newsletter, I find out that Mari Smith is into human design, obsessed with human design. And it didn't just make my day, it just made my year, I think, because I could not believe how amazing that someone who I really, really looked up to for so many years, guys, from 2007, probably so long, is also going in the same direction with this journey of discovering human design in 2020, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Yes.
The same year as I discovered it. And well, in your true fashion, you jumped in and we will talk about everything that you're doing with human design. And it was so interesting. So I sent Mari a fan mail, basically. I sent her a message on Facebook, completely starry-eyed, sort of, Mari, I love you. And please come to my podcast. And the next thing I know, Mari sends me a friend request. I do have a screenshot. And we are here. We've been talking. And you know what? It's been a few months since then. I am so excited about the timing that we're meeting. Wonderful weather. There's great energy in this month. There's so much empowerment. There's so much great intentions for the future you can set. And so I am so happy to talk to you, Mari, today with this intention of maybe we can reveal a little bit of our own world, because you're also a 1-3 just like me, but you are a sacral generator, whereas
Right.
I am a splenic projector. So we will talk about the differences. So we will talk a little bit of that, but we will also share about what we see is happening in the world with social media, with the online visibility, with the world, and how human design can really, I think, help us, and as a collective, really empower us to have a more aligned way of showing up, a more authentic way of showing up. Let's just start with your story, because I think that it's important to have the background with human design. How did this happen?
Oh, what's really interesting is I actually had my very first reading, a foundational reading. It was in, I want to say, the year 2000, around about that time. I was in a whole other different career, a whole other different life. And I had a reading from someone here in San Diego who'd been studying it. I think he's a certified analyst, but honest to God, it just was not the right timing. I was like, what the heck is this? All these weird shapes and numbers and this graph. And the only thing I took away from that reading afterwards, I remembered about it. He says, Mari, you have a really busy mind, a very active mind. There's a lot going on up there. It's probably hard for you to meditate. And I'm like, yeah, no question. That's for sure. And then I would say over the years, every now and again it would drop into my awareness, and I'm, oh yeah, human design. And I've always had a passion for typing systems. I'm very, very learned in the field of DISC, the DISC model. I definitely know quite a bit about the Myers-Briggs, and then there's, the Strengths Finder, and I love the Reese Desire Profile, the 16 fundamental human desires. And then, I just studied those, trained as a coach and whatnot over the years, and then got into my Facebook life, and that was in 2007. I got really immersed myself as a Facebook marketing expert. I've always had a passion for online marketing. But then the magical moment happened, and when human design came resounding back into my life, when it was like time, like all the angels were singing, and it was in a winter solstice of 2020. My very, very dear friend, my best friend, and she was coming over for a little girlfriend sleepover. Of course, we're still in COVID and lockdown, everybody's being careful. And she was coming over to my house. We're doing a little get together, and she's like, we sit down at my kitchen table, and she's like, Mari, I don't know why, but my intuition told me to bring this book. I was walking by my, a bookshelf on the way out the door, and this book just kind of like, oh, take this to Mari. And she opens up her bag, and she presents the book to me. And it's sure enough, it's a book on human design. I still get the goosebumps. He's just telling the story. I practically leapt out of my chair. I'm like waving my hands in the air. Human design, there's books on that, you can study it. And when we talk about sacral response, I didn't know that, I didn't recognize, that this was the truth of the sacral response, because it's not just like a yes, or a lot of times when you read it, people's like, or it's a can be a whole body response, or certainly it can be very subtle. It can be like this expansion of energy, or this pulling towards, versus a shrinking or a contracting feeling inside the body when it's a no, or not now, or maybe. So yeah, so that was it. And from that moment forward, I said to my dear friend Debbie, I'm like, I'm going to study this, and like immediately start doing all this research. I'm like, okay, where do I go to learn? I'm going to take classes. And like, seriously, that was, like I say, December of 2020. And I have been taking so many classes and on my way to being a certified professional analyst with the International Human Design School. I'm already a certified Living Your Design guide. I'm also studying, if that's not enough, with my Open Will Center, Heart Center, Ego Centers, like, keep going with the studies. I'm doing the BG5 Business Institute as well, as I really see, I know we're going to get to that in a little bit in the chat, just like how does human design really impact the business world as well, because there's so much to unpack on both the personal and the business. And just one more little snippet of the story, because you've known me for so long and through the Facebook world. I just knew in my soul, Juliette, I knew that after, like, here I'm in 16, I just celebrated my 16th anniversary of being this, premier Facebook marketing expert. And as a 1-3, it's the longest I've ever stayed in any one career. Because I look back over my life and go, wow, I've had so many careers. But the point I was going to make, one last point on this topic, was for several years prior to that moment in December 2020, I had been longing and searching and just feeling this lack of deep satisfaction, fulfillment in my Facebook marketing career. And not like I was ever about to ditch it, and I'm still not. I want to add to it. I want to bring more meaning, more substance. And my Chiron return is actually the cross of service. And then when I, that for me was 50, it was a few years ago now, but I really see where my cross of explanation synced up with my cross of service. I'm like, yeah, I just really want to be of more service and make a difference in the world. So
when you said that you want to bring this awareness of human design, and you don't want to just ditch, the Facebook now, because it's true with 1-3, that's what we do. I sometimes have a little paranoia, how long will this last? But I think that there's more to it. So, and I really, I had goosebumps all over my body, and that's a splenic reaction, because what I felt is that you are, with the visibility, you're one of the top most visible social media related persona in the world. Really, it's true. And for human design to find you, of all people, for you to feel so lit up by it and dive in your true student from a capital S fashion, and you're here on a mission that's even beyond yourself. You know, it's amazing that you are, when they say a way shower, that's how I see you, and your story just literally proved it, that this is where you're going with this. And I'm just excited because I know how your delivery style and your showing up style, it is so grounded, it is so, you know, it's in no way it's hyped up, no way it is inauthentic. You've always been, what you see is what you get. This is why I follow you for so many years, you know, and I just love it. There, it's like you're with a good, and I wouldn't even say some friend is a wrong word, it's like you're with someone who is your soul connection, and you
Mm.
trust them, so trustworthy. The information is always checked, the information is always processed through you, which is, that's what 1-3 does. And for you to be in that mission, it's just amazing. It's amazing. So
Thank
now that
you.
I've put this out there, this huge statement, I also do want to talk about, you know, your personal journey with discovering the human design, and then with your career and with the way you were showing up. And yes, things were, at least from the outside, they were always good and you were always showing up confidently. But was there anything that changed, or was there anything that you gave yourself permission to do or not to do? I'm so interested about that.
Oh gosh, yeah. I think the first part, we can just explain that. I use the word explain all the time. What defines me as a generator is the channel 214. It's called the beat, the keeper of the keys. And it's interesting you use the word wayshower, because in essence, that's my own wayshower, my own, I always think of it as the rudder on a boat. And so long as I'm following my own 214 and just being in my own as the individual circuitry, when I'm empowered by following my own inner guidance like that, and showing up and being empowered, it just automatically empowers others. However, I'm split definition like this. You know, I've got the 8, and then I don't have the 1, and so the 1 is my bridging gate. So my 214 being my, what defines me and what gives me my inner authority, my sacral response, but it's cut off. Or I should say cut off. It's yeah, it is split off. We've got 2 separate areas of definition, right? 2 separate areas of definition. We've got all this stuff going on, all these planets. It's like my teacher Lavina calls me top heavy, which always makes me chuckle. All the planets are in the head, ajna, and throat, and a little bit down below. But when I discovered, like, oh my gosh, my head's not supposed to make decisions. I'm like looking down at my navel going, there's intelligence down here. There's something down in my belly that can help me make decisions, you know, or that can give me guidance. And so one of the biggest applications, to answer your question, in business is I started to really tune into that chakra response, which is about hands width below the belly button. It's not really the gut per se. We call it the gut. Trust your gut. Let your gut be your guide. But it's really below that. It would map really kind of to the second chakra. If you put your hand right back on the triangular shaped bone at the, you know, the sacrum, and then it's front and back. Right? That's where the sacral is, or the sacral, depending what country you come from. And so I would, for instance, I'd get these invitations come in all the time, you know, by email, DMs, whatever. Mari, you speak here, will you be on this podcast? Whatever's the invitation. Will you want a joint venture? Get an interview? But it's like whatever the invitation would be, or the, you know, opportunity. And I would tune into my sacral, and always trusting the first response, and going like, I start to feel this energetic, sometimes so subtle, where it's like contraction. This is a no, or a not now. And then also my main assistant, my virtual assistant, Jenny, she is a reflector. She does bridge my split. She's gate 1. She's virtual. We've never met in person. And I know in aura is very different. In aura, frequencies are very different, but there's definitely a transfer of energy that happens when we're on our Zooms. And so I'd have her ask me yes, no questions, and which is really important to the sacral generator in particular, but all generators for sure. And so I just started feeling more in alignment with what was true for my body, for my body's wisdom, for my vehicle, as Ra would call it, Ra Uru Hu, right? The founder of human design, as everybody knows, I'm sure, that listens to your podcast. But I was like, okay, my vehicle is starting to feel more healthy, more vibrant, more alive, because I am giving up this control, this mental control of thinking the decision-making process would be like this, Juliette. wow, but it's good money. Or or I would be like, ah, it's not really good money, but who else will be speaking there? And oh, I don't want to say no, and I don't want to let them down. And oh, I've kind of given them a soft yes, so I have to make it work now. I got to prove myself. And who else is going to be there? Oh, well, just all this mental game to make this anguished decision instead of like a gut response. Boom, yes, that's great. And so my calendar has been filling up the last couple of years with just so many more delightful yeses that my gut has truly responded to.
It is so amazing to hear it because it just corresponds with my experience 100%. I am a splenic, so my knowing is in the moment as well. And there's no way I can delay saying yes or no to something
Right.
because
Yeah.
the head is scary. How it sabotages you, it's scary. The chatter in the head. And I have also a 63.4 channel, which can, when you turn inwards on yourself and you start questioning yourself, it's a broken record of negativity. It can be. And it's
Can
really,
be,
really,
yeah.
I already recognize when I go down that because sometimes we all, float between not self and alignment. But what I've learned with the splenic response is that when you feel a yes, it has to be a yes. It doesn't matter what you think later on because you have to separate these two processes. The brain will always go to something. Most likely it will try to protect you, what it thinks it's a protection. So it will talk you out of doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
Or, with other things like what you mentioned, like proving yourself. You might not use
Mm-hmm.
those words to yourself, but that's what essentially you're doing. You're proving you're
That's
a nice
right.
person. You're proving you can make it work. And knowing that it's a no, it's also power. I find with this, it's not always that you know that it's a yes, and we can get very excited in each other's auras. We can get very excited
Mm.
for other reasons about each other, but the invitation or the opportunity might not be very aligned. And I know that I sometimes have these, I just know it's a no, but I
Mm.
understand I might have to be with the person. Maybe it's an interview, or maybe it's discovery call, or any kind of conversation. So
Yeah.
I write on the, and I have loads of piece of papers always, and I just literally sit there, write no. I have to remind myself about this gut feeling I had in the beginning, gut feeling or knowing. It's more a
Yeah.
knowing that it
Yeah.
was a
It's a
no. My
body
body
felt
said
sense.
no,
Mm.
don't go there. So I still have to be there, but, and it's interesting because it's in a way it's similar. I have another question. Before you discovered human design, did you ever have any insecurities, let's say, about talking about yourself?
I would say I had a lot of insecurities. I'm not sure if it would be talking about myself so much as just, I come from an entire family of 5-1s. I have three sisters. They're all 5-1s. My dad was a 5-1, and my mother is a 6-2. So I was only 1-3. And when I look at my life and my childhood, and where the third line, learning by trial and error, making a boatload of mistakes, being promiscuous in my teens and 20s, just learning by trial and error. And so, but also in the business terms, I love how they call it pioneer. I've never resonated with the word martyr. And I know all my
Yes.
human design purist friends out there, I know I'm an investigative martyr, but I just love the word pioneer better. Probably my not self mind, right? My not self is like, I'm not calling myself a martyr. But I think that Ra gave it that word because what the third line does is bravely goes where no man or woman has gone before, and tries things out, goes back to the tribe and goes, or the collective, and goes, holy crap, I just learned what doesn't work. So you guys don't go over there because that doesn't work, but this does work. And so that's what's meant by it. I have a friend of mine, a study buddy friend in the human design world, that says, oh my God, Mari, you know what the 1-3 is like? The 1-3 is like the like a mad scientist, not necessarily mad, but the scientist in the lab with the white lab coat on, like the beakers and jars and whatever, but they're also like the lab rat as well. So like you're doing these experiments, sometimes on your own self, sometimes with your health, you're experiment. I know for me, I'm always experimenting. And so,
So you were saying we're like Doc in Back to the Future. That's what we are. With the, with the electrical connection, and he just goes, okay, I'm just doing it myself. And I so feel it. I so feel it.
That's a good way to put it. But then the first line, because see, the third line is unconscious. It just happens. It just comes out of you, right? The pioneer stuff. But the first line, I have 10 first lines, and 8 of which are conscious. And so my first line, really learning how that investigative nature to be able to create that solid foundation so that I have that sense of security. And when I don't have that sense of security, when I don't really know something that well, or there's questions, there's doubts, I have my son is in the 4th line, and you have the whole channel. So you have the 63, 4, I have the 4, and then my busy mind is the 64, 47. The first line is just really seeking that solid foundation, and the doubts will creep in if I don't have it. And the insecurity part you were saying about talking about myself, I'd say I was a painfully shy child. It's astonishing to me when my adult self in my mid-50s looks back to that cute little girl who was just grew up in the boonies of BC, Canada, with all her sisters, lived off the land in a little farm, had goats and hens. And my dad was a real eccentric Renaissance man. He was a baker. We had this big garden, lived off the land, like I say. And I was so shy. I was terrified of my dad. He was emotionally defined. Now I see he had the 1222, and there's a couple places we made some electromagnetics, but there's some compromises as well. And I think I was really terrified of his emotional definition, where he would just fly off into rage. He was a emotional manifesting generator 5-1. So that was really deeply conditioning me from an infant. I would just cry a lot. The deeper layers of human design, people often ask, what are the arrows, or what do the extra numbers mean? And people know that they can understand the gates and the lines and maybe like the profile and the cross. But then we get into the deeper, the PHS, the environment and the left or the right and the perspective and the cognitions and things like that. So this is all, like I say, this is all still learning to me, still assimilating, still processing. But I know that my perspective, like my view, the eyes through which I am designed to see, is called power. And so when I'm in alignment with myself, when I am correct in my proper design, is to be able to see leadership and hierarchies and who has power. And I love that quote by Tom Peters, who's one of the de facto forever leadership experts on the planet. And he has a beautiful quote I've always resonated with. And he's like, leaders don't create followers, leaders create more leaders. And that just like speaks to me so profoundly. It's like, yes, that's what I do. That's what I want. But the flip of that, what happens is we get into transference as we get distracted to the other side of it. Those are the colors, right? There's the colors and the tones and the bases. And so for me, I'll know when I'm off track with myself if I notice I'm taking something really personally. So I'm connecting those dots. When you were asking me about, like, did I feel insecure speaking about myself over, in my previous prior to human design, and I'm connecting the dots to also just that potentially having myself taking things personally on the perspective.
It's so interesting because I think that, okay, we can come approach this from the point of knowledge, so now because you're studying this, all these little well, they're not little things, really. I think they're massive things: environment and your view and motivation. But they're the things, sometimes they're the things that are outside our control, but they're playing huge role in our lives. And because of the difference, and that's what makes us unique as well in understanding this and finding this. For me, for example, it was an insecurity about talking about me, because in marketing you should be talking about them. In your messaging you should be talking about them. What do they need to hear? With the 1-3 profile, for example, the insecurity of talking about myself in my marketing and just generally the stories about and reflections and my perspectives and how I see it, that's what attracts a lot of very, very good people into my life, and clients and everyone else. And that hence was my question, if you had a similar experience. But I suppose that your level of visibility was very, very different as well. So you were already skilled, I would say, at being there and showing up and having all that. But it's really interesting what you said about taking things personally. So we all have our own flavor.
We do have our own flavor. And I think you're saying some of these, like the deeper layers are massive, but and it can get really complex and overwhelming for a lot of folks that are maybe new to human design. I think it's really important to stay with the fundamentals, which is type, strategy, and authority, right? So one of the biggest differences between you and I is the generator versus a projector. And so our signatures are different. I know I'm on track when I feel satisfied. I'm off track when I feel frustrated. For yourself, of course, it's success and versus bitterness. And I know from my main teacher, Lavina, who I understand is going to be on your show, which I'm so excited
She is,
about.
yes.
It's phenomenal. And she's a 3-5 projector. Emotional, right? And so she will talk about how some projectors will literally, even depending on the activations potentially in your spleen, that you might literally even have a sweetness in your mouth, sweet success. She'll talk about having the taste of sweet success versus when you're off track, like a little bit of a bitterness or a metallic taste. It doesn't happen for every necessarily splenic projector, but the projectors are designed to be one-on-one, and their existential question is, who's the other, right? So when you're talking about business and not talking about yourself, projectors ideally would lead with success stories and case studies and client testimonials and endorsements and shining the light on others, and then that's what can attract more invitations to do business with you. Whereas the generator's existential question, of course, we know when we say generator, that includes manifesting generators with the sacral lit up, is who am I? Who am I for myself? It's not about being like, well, selfish or, egotistical or whatever. It's like, when I really, truly, profoundly can understand, like Descartes said, like, know thyself. I think maybe he was a generator, is to, when I can understand who am I for myself, okay, I'm grounded in who I am. Now I can show up more of who I am for others. And especially being a 1-3, I got a little bit triggered at first when Lavina would say, gosh, the 1-3 is the most selfish, self-absorbed, self-focused profile, because we're at the bottom of the hexagram. And I would get
And it's
triggered
true.
because but I love other people. I like to focus on other people. And then the other parts started to fall in place. Oh, I'm gate 4. I'm born in the third quarter is dualities, bonding. And so are you, Julie. I'm sure you know that about yourself. With you're just a little bit round the corner from me on the wheel with the gate 64, is you're also born in the quarter of duality. So your purpose is fulfilled through bonding, through both of us. Bonding in relationships and people is like lifeblood of what we do.
It's so true. In fact, I remember every time I'm a very positive person, so I don't really go into the darkness too much or for too long.
Yeah.
But every time I did, my husband would say to me, "You need to get a few more client calls. You need to connect to some people." I don't have a huge social life. I'm a very lone wolf, and he'd be like, "No, you need to talk to people, because that's when you talk to people, things happen." So what you just said is absolutely true. And you mentioned the word selfish, and not even with the 1-3, talking even about the generator. I sometimes I tell my clients, sometimes you have to do selfishly your marketing, meaning focus on yourself, because we all the projector focuses on themselves through the eyes of the other. So yes, we are kind of focusing on the other to learn about ourselves, because we're in the darkness here. Whereas the generator, and you just echoed what I'm saying, is focus on yourself. When you're grounded in yourself, it's not about them. You want to give it, you want to give good things to other people. People pleasing is a big thing, but if it's about you, then your what comes out of you changes, your demeanor changes, this light changes, it becomes so magnetic. It's like you're really feeling like you're and you're feeling like you're in a big hug with this person. Actually, no,
That's right.
I am thinking now, this is how I always felt when I watched all your trainings, Facebook related, and you knew, software or something, and you're showing, and I am there, and I'm thinking, why am I here? Although I should be doing something else, but I'm sitting here watching this masterclass or training, and you go along as 1-3s do. And this is it. It's this feeling of, it's the hug. It's a lovely, lovely feeling, because you're showing up in such a grounded way. And that's just so, so amazing. I think we talked about ourselves so much on this, and it's time for us to really maybe expand a little bit to did I pick up that you are more individual circuitry person? Is that
Yes, I
what?
am. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm a
Yeah.
collective.
Yeah, there's definitely aspects here that are unique and different. The circuitry is a huge part of it. I have the 4323, the channel of structuring, a design of individuality. I love how Ra calls it a design of individuality, in parentheses, genius to freak.
Oh,
And people are
yes.
like, oh yeah, and most individual circuitry, all individual circuitry is can be a bit freaky because it's all about the timing. And it's about the time. And if you show up, I have a lot of individual circuitry with my 214 and my 4323. I have 6 planets in 4323. So 4 43s and 223s. And so when I learned about myself, oh my God, I am absolutely here to explain my knowing, take the complex, and I have 262s as one of the gates of detail. And of the whole 1762, the organizational channel and acceptance, design of an organizational being. And so it's like structuring my knowing in this detailed way, and then my abstraction, taking what worked in the past and breaking it down and what didn't work in the past, flowing it through my 4323 and explaining it to the collective and the tribe in a way, and other individuals, in a way that boom, it lands with them. They understand it, they get it, it transmutes them, transforms them. And then I have my 12, my conscious moon is in 12.6, so caution. So I literally, I've always been aware of this of myself in an interview or a public speaking. It's like I'm putting my hand back here because it's like somewhere behind my head, behind my brain, behind my knowing, my consciousness, there's this filter. So I know, like, I'm never going to accidentally swear. I'm never going to accidentally say the wrong thing, although I'm a third line, I might trip up and make a mistake. But I'm going to be principled with my 49. I'm going to be generous with my 27 and 4. And then I'm going to be, just true to who I am. It just comes out of you. As Ra would say, it's mechanics. It's just mechanics. Right. And so, yeah, I love to be able to explain my knowing in a way that just lands with other people, and then they feel empowered. One of my favorite things, and you kind of talked about it at the very beginning, it might have even been when we were still in the green room, but I will go out and just do my thing, and my 214's out there doing my thing, which is one of the penta channels as well as a large group. So I can show up and do very well in the business terms of it in small groups and in large groups. So I get up there and do my thing on stage and feeling very confident because I've studied to the nth degree. I know everything about Facebook, or most everything that marketers need to know. And then people will come up to me, these conferences, and they'll be like, Mari, I've been following you for so many years and I launched my entire agency, or like, I have this whole business going on, or you like really like, I've just modeled myself after you. And I'm standing there going like, whoa, really? Wow. Oh, I'll just show up and be myself, and somehow it's made a difference to you, so I just love that.
It is amazing. And this is really what individual circuitry sort of visibility is, isn't it? You're showing up, you're doing it for yourself,
Yes.
you're kind of expressing yourself, and you, through that, you empower others or influence others. Whereas for me, with my collective, I was thinking, how can I simply put what collective circuitry is for me? Because as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I would never be able to do what you do. I sit here admiring you with all the numbers and the gates, and I have zero memory. I only have the understanding. And my understanding of this is, for example, when my husband was very sick, and at the end, we already knew that it was the end of it. That was the only time when I started sharing this, because what was happening was not about me, and not even about me or my husband and us. It was about the bigger vision of the process of the process of grief, the process of death, the process of grief when you know that death is coming, so it's not sudden. And only then I started really sharing publicly, and it just was pouring out of me. I could not share. And I
I
feel
love
like
that.
it's
Wow.
about like, this is for the world. And I find that the most, everything in my content, the things that rank the most, the things that attract most people to me, there are those things where I'm just saying, I have to say it because this is important for all of us to understand, like the projection field in human design, or line 5. And I feel very passionate about this whole life in projection field, even though it doesn't really affect me directly because I'm a 1-3. I don't really have that many fifth lines in my chart.
Mhm.
And yet it's like you can't stop, and you don't do it to empower in a way, you don't do it sort of like, okay, I'm here, the queen of something, visibility, look at me and do as I tell you. It's not that. It's just you have
Yeah.
to say it, and someone out there will hear it and they will do it. But you do it with an intention that someone out there will hear it, and maybe that's what they need to hear today to change the
Yeah.
course of something. And that I just
Yeah.
love how different. I am yet to get that kind of explanation for the tribal circuitry. Like, where is that thing that lights them in a way that this is what makes it all happen?
Tribal's keyword is support, and it's absolutely reciprocal. It is you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. It's the bargain, it's the marriage contract. It's basically quid pro quo. If somebody's very tribal, they will potentially help someone out, but then they're kind of like waiting for something in return. But they're also, like you see tribes where it's like if they're all got certain face paintings or they're wearing a certain dress, and their kind of moniker is people like us do things like this. And you're
The
like, oh,
belonging,
you're one of
conforming.
me. Exactly. Yeah, we're together, and you can see that reflected in some of like social media where you get like pockets of people, and they can get very divisive and they can get competitive. There's tribal activations going into the heart center, the ego center, where it's like tribes historically have duked it out until the stronger one, can win, if you will. So, but yeah, the
And this is
collective
what we wanted
sharing.
to talk about in the first place, didn't we? We were talking about this, even planning this episode. We were talking about how people are getting very quick to judge, quick to
Yeah.
criticize others. I know you spoke on some other interviews that you did about, how people quickly unfriend you and block you just because you don't think their way.
Well, one of the things that's coming to mind, Juliette, that I think is so important is like anybody in the planet could, run their chart and even have a full-on reading, an overview reading or a full-on foundational reading, and recognize about ourselves that for most likely, the longer someone's been on this planet, they are deeply, deeply, deeply conditioned, and they're deeply, deeply not self. So we can look at it and like, oh my gosh, you've got this activation, you've got this strength, this is how you show up. And then you just imagine you were like a secret camera one following them around. You'd be like, whoa, what a shame. That person is so not self. I just love how Ra calls human design an experiment, a daily experiment. And we're talking about the not self, and how the trick is not to just get through your first 7 year cycle of deconditioning, and then all of a sudden, ta-da, you're complete. You've made it. You're just going to start another 7 year cycle and keep going and going and going. And that's the 7 years is basically how long it takes for the cells to completely renew themselves in your entire body. And so I love to liken it to Michelangelo when he was creating the statue of David, and he's got this giant lump of marble, and he could see in his mind's eye David in this statue, and he starts just chipping away at the marble and cutting away everything that was not David. And so I think about that with our own selves. Each day that we're in this experiment, we're chipping away at the not self and getting better and better at creating a tiny, tiny little gap between the first thought that the not self mind, conditioned mind, tries to come in and cast those doubts and judgments and insecurities, and then going, whoa, that's my mind, and this is my body's wisdom, my true self. I want to briefly circle back to our beginning when you were talking about your splenic knowing, and the mnemonic for anybody who has splenic authority is that there's only truth in the now. Like, you really are an in the moment person, and having your only two strengths, two channels being future logic, what you were sharing about with the process with your husband, and just like not able to share until the moment was right. And then your intuitive knowing, that felt sense in your body of the splenic authority, and going, okay, now is the time to share. Those that have the solar plexus emotional authority, the moniker there is there's no truth in the now. right? You're waiting out those emotional waves, good 24 hours, sleeping on it. Can I get back to you? Don't make spontaneous decisions. My partner's like that. And that's been tremendous in my relationship to recognize, okay, he just needs a little more time. And to be able to not take personally when he's on the flows of his emotional waves.
I joked about human design saving my marriage, even though it didn't need to be saved. But there was this understanding. There was this understanding of the mechanics, understanding why, and I have an undefined root. My husband had defined root. He would come up to me, and whatever I was doing, my hands would start shaking. And I'd be saying, like, go away, go away with your
Oh, you
root.
could
We were
feel the
shopping
pressure.
together. And the last year, it's funny, he was not into human design at all or anything, he was not a woo-woo person at all. And yet the very last year of his life, he was almost, I would say, trained in a way, because if we go shopping and we loved just, hanging around big streets or malls, I'll go shopping and I'll be like, go away with your root. And he'll be going away somewhere waiting for me in a coffee shop while I shop. And I only understood this through this prism, that it wasn't him, and there was no need to take it personally and bring all these personal things that can happen in a marriage, but there is just these dynamics, and sometimes we need to have space from each other, and
Yeah.
sometimes we need to be together. And that was really, really, really amazing. While you were talking about just generally, the mind and being in the not self, and the fact that we don't achieve alignment. This is very important for everyone to understand. There is a bit of a discourse there, become aligned. You can't become fully aligned. Otherwise you are, I think it was Ra who said that you'll be running around in the meadow with, flowers in your hair, and you don't need anything. You don't want anything. Alignment is, we're living on a material plane. And
Right.
as long as you want to change of any description, you're misaligned, and that's the truth. That's just reality. But it's beautiful.
Mhm.
It's a journey. It's an experiment.
Yeah.
We are aware of what our energy map is in its full aligned form, and we can strive to be that, and we can direct ourselves, or just be aware when we are not in alignment, so we can bring ourselves back and make less mistakes,
Right.
not make mistakes we're not meant to make, because we should make mistakes. This is my third line now, says we should
Third
make
line.
mistakes, we should try things, because
Yeah.
otherwise, how do you know what works? How do you know what
Exactly.
works? Go for it. Jump into that, pond, and see if you can swim, or whatever it is, that can happen.
Yeah.
But with the collective, especially with and just bring it back to who you are in terms of as in your role in this world as a premier Facebook marketing expert, and all, everything is about social media, and you're so knowledgeable, and you observe a lot from, because you've built such a huge audience, and you can see these trends in people, and how there's just so much. And you mentioned this before, and anger and frustration and bitterness. What matters in this world, this noisy world of social media, online visibility, anything, business? What matters most? And we are talking about the basics of human design. That's what I'm talking
Yeah.
about here. But
Yeah.
I wanted your view and your perspective, and what do you see from that place where you are now?
Sure. Well, I think it's so important for your listeners to understand that, for example, 2/3 of the world have the sacral, the red square in the middle there. So 2/3, 66% are either a generator or a manifesting generator. And we talked earlier about the not self signature. The signature of the not self is frustration. And then if you're a manifesting generator, you might have some anger tinged in there. And so that's an enormous amount of not self frequency that's emitting out around the world on the planet when the generator type is not in alignment with themselves. So they're in a relationship that's not correct for them. They're in an environment that's not correct for them. They are in a job that is not deeply satisfying. One of the critical components for generators is to do work that you love, to utilize your life force, whether it's work, daily activities, hobbies, passion projects, that light you up, that energize you. When your head hits that pillow at the end of every night, you feel deeply satisfied in how you have used your life force. That sacral is the battery's kind of like drained down and is going to regenerate overnight. So what happens in social media, when you can see when somebody's frustrated or they're angry, or you've got the 10% or so or who are the manifestor type, and they're not self-signature being anger, and then the projector about the 20 some percent being the bitterness, and the reflectors with the disappointment. So this is a lot of not self frequency that gets penetrated and emitted out into the world in general. And you'll see it where you can see it going into the store, where people just have the solemn, sad, depressed kind of look on their face. Or you get people who've got road rage is 100% not self. But from a social media and putting yourself out there perspective, one of the things that I started to do, knowing that the generators respond to a yes, no question, is I will, instead of just saying, hey, check out this offer, or, hey, go watch this video, more of like a command, I will ask a question. Would you like to watch? Hey, I've just put up this video on YouTube. Would you like to watch? And it's like, oh my gosh, this is working. It's like more people are clicking on it. How cool is that? And of course, not catching everybody with that, because that's 2/3 of the world. But that just is really a fun and interesting way to do it. And then also, kind of like you were explaining about your husband, and I love that, with having just the example of the defined root versus not. And what we can do is, even a simple level, whether somebody knows a lot about human design or hardly anything, hopefully know more after listening to this episode. But when you're scrolling through your newsfeed on Facebook or Instagram, and you start seeing people like acting out, or you see something that kind of like, oof, that person is really, just off track, then just have compassion for them. Have compassion, or understand, what, this is just, as Ra would say, it's just mechanics. Maybe they're actually are being their true selves, and they have one of their activations is just they're provocateur. they like to pick fights, or they like to criticize and improve things, so
It's very interesting because I love blocking people.
Did
And
you?
so,
That's
and I always say this is my third line, where if I closed a Facebook group, it was about 2,000 people in there, and I just, it didn't fit into my life. And so
yeah.
I took them one by one, and I celebrated every one of them that I was deleting. And sometimes, but I hear exactly what you're saying. Have the compassion, understand that this is not personally aimed at you, and it's okay for them to also have their own opinion. Of course, there is also, sometimes it can bother you that you see
Yeah.
someone, and in those cases I always say, well, look, you are in control of your news feed on all the networks. You're in control. If somebody really bothers you, that you feel like they're taking your life juice away from you every time you see their posts, you can unfollow, you can block, you can remove them, because you're not for everyone, and not everyone is for you. You do not have to. I know how many people have a lot of fear of being on. Even some people say to me, oh, I don't like Facebook. I'm saying, well, why do you not like Facebook? What exactly? Well, all these people, and but you have full control. My newsfeed doesn't look like my husband's newsfeed, with the rage of football fans and politics and all that, and it was a completely different, like, parallel dimension, our experiences of this platform. But you are in control, and you can choose, and if you, as long as you are following your strategy and authority, right?
That's right, exactly. And by the way, nobody knows if you unfollow them.
Yes.
They might eventually see that you've unfriended them. Certainly, if you block them, they don't really know. They just suddenly they don't see each other, right? But they never get a notification, right? Juliette just blocked you. That doesn't happen. It's just a quiet little, like, they disappear.
And the truth is that when you're using Facebook for building an audience for your business, say you're a coach, and even if you're using personal profile like me, you're not doing ads, most of those people are complete strangers. You do not have any obligation to stay connected with them if they are incorrect people for you. That's my stance on this. And there is, you don't, yes, there is, obviously, we need to agree to disagree, I believe.
Yes.
Maybe it's because I have almost no tribal energy in my chart. I am sort of, let's agree to disagree, because, some things are more important. But when you're feeling like it's affecting you, you have control. You have control. And sometimes, most of the time, these people who you don't know personally, they're not people who you have some sort of obligation. As Marie just said, Marie, nobody knows you're unfollowed. Nobody ever even understands, except for marketers, how to check who is following you, who is unfollowing you. We're talking about friends versus following here. So there is no way that it can backfire at you, really. But I think that you need to be protective of you can find the way to create an experience that is very aligned with what you want to how would I say it, not to see, but that feeds into inspiring you rather than feeds into frustrating you and making you feel inadequate and making you feel more bitter, more disappointed, whatever the signature is.
It's so true. It's so true. It's very true. And there's a beautiful quote that I want to share with your listeners, and that is that we absolutely need to stop comparing the inside of ourselves with the outside of others. And that happens a lot when we're scrolling through our feed. And if you have the fear of inadequacy, the 836, I do, you have an open heart center, which 2/3 of the world do. And so then there's some lack of worthiness there, just maybe not lack of confidence even. And so then you go and you look at somebody's post, especially on Instagram, it's all this beautiful, polished, perfect presentation of a life. And that mind starts going, oh my gosh, they have just the perfect life. They have it all together. They're so successful. They're so wealthy. They're so happy. There's da, 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 da. And then you're like, wait a minute. I don't know that for sure. I don't know this person at all. I have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. They might be really struggling in their life, their business, whatever. So we just have to knock off that I call it comparisonitis.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is very good point. You never know what's actually happening. To create a shiny cover, and I often say to people, create that shiny cover. It does sell. It does, present you as somebody, and money flows to the status, to celebrity. So create the shiny cover. However, we're all creating shiny covers, so we don't know what's happening behind that front, and it's a little naive to take it as at face value. And you have to go a little bit deeper than that. And that's my message, with this, with the episode. But I also know that there is more to being in Mari's world in terms of human design. And so I think before I let you go, Mari, maybe you can talk about your wonderful community that you created.
Oh, thank you so much. Community is one of the things that really works well on Facebook. So Facebook groups, I think for a lot of people who are maybe feeling a bit jaded about Facebook, they don't really use their page as much. They don't really do ads, but they just love their groups, either running them or participating in them. So I'm a big fan of groups, and I have my ones called Social Scoop, which I've had for many, many years. And then about a year ago, I'm like, you know what? I started to see and feel and hear some rumblings. I'm like, it is time to start a whole separate community that's off of Facebook. And this is what I'm teaching my clients and students now, is to go ahead and look into potentially using a third-party platform that is in your control, that you're not at the mercy of the algorithms or whatever the heck Facebook Meta decides to do. And so I chose to set up a brand new platform, our community, called Mari Smith's Superstars. It's just marismithsuperstars.com. It's totally free to join. It's built on the Mighty Networks platform. I love Mighty Networks. I'm a big fan of Gina Bianchini, the founder. I love supporting female-owned businesses. She's previously the co-founder of Ning. I'm dating myself. Some folks remember Ning. It was one of the original social networks. And it's basically like having your own Facebook. And so what I'm doing in Mari Smith Superstars is I am giving myself full permission to talk about human design there, to teach about human design. I've done a lot of free classes, and then I'm also bringing in some social media training, talk a little bit about the future of business, the future of marketing, AI, some personal development, and just giving myself like wings. Like I feel like I have this freedom to do so much more self-expression in this beautiful community. So folks are more than welcome to come on and join us there and check it out.
Well, thank you so much, Mari. Thank you for being my wonderful guest today and sharing and just inspiring. I am inspired, at the end of this. You came and there's so many little things that we connect that are massive, of massive influence for me personally, and I'm talking about myself. I'm very aware of this, that I'm talking about myself again. But guys, I hope that you got tremendous value from hearing someone who's achieved such a great positioning as the way shower. I'm going to use that word, the way shower. And now with this next level of human design, I think that if we're looking to connect to, we always talk about ideal clients. We always talk about that, the ideal client, the perfect people, they can happen. They can happen when you follow your strategy and authority, when you understand what's correct, what's incorrect for you. And I'm a walking testament for that, because in the last year and a half, all I attract is amazing people, not a single bad person. And I used to be a nightmare client magnet, I called myself, because it was always wrong, because I was always trying to prove myself that I'm good for the job, I'm a nice person, and all these other things. But now with this understanding, there's so much permission you can give yourself to be who you are. And it's easy. When you are being who you are, it's easy. It's not extra effort. It's not a hassle. It's very aligned, very easy way. You sometimes will be surprised you have so much free time, so much enjoyment comes, so much wonderful connections that you're making, opportunities come in, and there's so many synchronicities. And it's just like in the beginning, I was telling you how I met Mari now in this year, how we connected, how this episode happened. This is all a bigger picture here. This was meant to be.
Yes.
And so focus on what might be meant to be in your life, but it'll only happen when you are making aligned decisions, I think. When you are following this strategy, you understand how you are, you understand your energy, makeup and mechanics of it, how you interact with other people, and you bring that into your business, and that you bring yourself into your business. And then with that full understanding of who you are, we were talking about circuitries, how Mari feels with her individual circuitry, that when she is herself expressing herself, it empowers others, and she doesn't even mean to. Or like me, when I need to share with the world, and I don't do it to tell people what to do. But it's still, there is a bigger picture with that. So I hope that you can just give yourself permission to be that, whatever it is for you. And that's why we're here. That's why we're so passionate about human design. We don't want to put you in any boxes, but we want to empower you to find that way to be you, unique you, and in full power, just show up, be visible, and, live in your mission. So Mari, thank you so much. We will put the link to the Superstars community underneath this episode. And again, I'm so honored we could have this conversation today.
Oh, likewise. It's been a deep pleasure. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you. And guys, I will see you in the next episode of Visibility by Design. Bye.